Right now, the man suspected of gunning down conservative activist Charlie Kirk is being held without bail. Tyler Robinson, a technical college student from southern Utah, was arrested after his father called a family friend who then contacted authorities. Sources tell CNN he is no longer speaking with investigators. The 22-year-old is a registered voter but is not affiliated with a political party on voter records and did not vote in the last two presidential elections. The state's governor says Robinson had recently mentioned that Kirk was going to appear in Utah.
Investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson who stated that Robinson had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent incident in which Robinson came to dinner prior to September 10th, and in the conversation with another family member, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated Kirk was full of hate and spreading hate.
Let's get straight out to CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst, John Miller, who's been across this all day. And John, that press conference now, 3 or 4 hours ago, there was a lot of information that law enforcement had to share. Talk to us about the key pieces of information we learned and how law enforcement will be using that information right now, given that we've heard they'll likely be executing search warrants.
So, Christina, what they shared with us this morning at the press conference was that Tyler Robinson had been confronted by his father after the newest pictures came out yesterday afternoon, put out by authorities, and looked at the pictures and said to his son, "Is this you?" And that, according to investigators, his son admitted to his father, "Yes, that is me." And the father urged him to turn himself in. And we are told by sources that his response was, "I would rather kill myself than turn myself in." But the father, according to people briefed on the investigation, convinced his son to talk to their local youth pastor. They called the minister. They had a conversation. The youth pastor is also essentially the chaplain for the sheriff's department, where the fugitive task force is, and spoke to the United States Marshal there and said, you know, he had this information. The FBI made contact, and by 10 o'clock last night, Tyler Robinson was in custody.
We also learned, John, that the suspect, or we heard in that press conference, that the suspect had become more political over the past few years. And the governor spoke about those inscriptions found on some of the casings, one of them reading, "Hey, fascist, catch." I mean, how important will all of that be in determining a motive as authorities file these documents in preparation for bringing charges, I believe, early next week?
Well, they'll be very important. The idea that the weapon, the rifle, has been recovered, the bullets inside it, as well as the shell casing from the bullet that killed Mr. Kirk, with messages inscribed on them, is the closest thing we have to any statement that has gone to motive. When you pair that up with what you reported earlier, the angry conversations about Charlie Kirk at the dinner table, the discussion that he was coming to the area, you start to see a circumstantial case. And as you also indicated, with the search warrants going on today, they will see what is in his computers, on his phone, in those hard drives. What has he been searching and researching? Has he been looking at the attempted assassination of President Trump, where he may have gotten the idea to do a long-distance shot from a rooftop? Did he look at the United Healthcare CEO murder, where he may have gotten the idea to inscribe messages in the bullets and on the shell casings? They'll be looking for all of that while they await for scientific testing, having taken his prints, extensive prints, not just fingerprints, but palm prints, DNA, to compare with DNA they may have recovered at the scene or on the weapon. So they are very much at the end of the manhunt, but still very much at the beginning of the investigation.
Yeah, so many levels to this. And to your point, I mean, this does feel like we're at the start of a very long road here. John, appreciate your thoughts for now. Thank you.
Thanks,
joining us From Utah now is CNN's Ed Lavandera, who is on the scene where Tyler Robinson is being held. Ed, in that jail behind you. Paint the scene for us and tell us what more you're learning.
Well, it was just hours after the press conference yesterday evening where authorities here in Utah released more video images of the suspect running across a rooftop on the university campus and fleeing the scene, as well as other closer pictures of the suspect captured on surveillance cameras. And it was after that that conversation that our colleague John Miller is reporting that the father had with the suspect happened around 10 o'clock, so just a couple of hours later. And then we're told here that quickly after that, the suspect, Tyler Robinson, was arrested, taken into custody, and he was brought to this jail in Utah County, which is quite almost like it's a 3.5 hour drive from where he was arrested. Robinson lives in the southwest corner of this state, a great distance away here. So it was just before 2 a.m. that the suspect was booked into the county jail. He is being held without bond, so he cannot get out. And we've heard from local prosecutors here that he will make his initial court appearance next Tuesday afternoon, where he will then be formally charged with the crimes related to the assassination of Charlie Kirk here this week in Utah. So the investigative front still continues, but now also on the legal front, as those criminal charges in state court will be filed. And we've also learned, Christina, that there are federal criminal charges that could be filed against this suspect as well.
And Ed, we know he has been apparently speaking to investigators. Do you know if that is still going on, or has that come to an end?
Well, we've had two sources who've told us that he was initially talking to investigators, but has since stopped talking. So, lawyered up was, I think, is the phrase that one of those sources had used to describe the suspect no longer cooperating. And and there's some real context missing so far as to what exactly the motivation might have been here. We heard John Miller reporting about the details and the conversations that one family member has told investigators that the suspect had a dislike for Charlie Kirk, but what exactly that dislike was about isn't exactly clear at this point, just that there was some dislike of him. So we're still trying to dig into those details as well, because that context, I think, is really crucial to understanding how all of this unfolded and why it unfolded the way it did.
Yeah, so much context for us to understand in the days to come. We will, of course, learn more in 3 days when prosecutors bring those charges. Ed, for now, we appreciate it. Thank you. And I want to now bring in attorney and legal affairs commentator Ariva Martin. Ariva, I'm sure you've just been listening to all that Ed and John were saying just before. And I wanted to put to you that given all the new detail that we have learned from today's press conference, which so far points to a motive and possibly a confession from the shooter who confided in his family about the shooting, how strong a case do you think investigators have here? And I know it's very early days, but just wanted to get your take.
Well, based on what we know to date, it's a pretty strong case, because not only do we have the potential admission or confession that was given to family members, but also what we're learning from investigators is that there's physical evidence that links the shooter to the murder, as well as we know the video footage, which is very, very important to the capture of the shooter, as well as going to play significantly in the case that will be presented by the prosecutors as they move forward in the first court hearing next week. So based on everything that's been reported to date, it appears to be that they have the right person in custody, and that they're going to be able to make a pretty strong case on the 3 felony counts that we expect, and that's the aggravated murder, the felony gun charge, and the obstruction of justice charge.
A motive is very important here, not least because in Utah there is, of course, a death penalty. Presumably prosecutors are going to try and make that case. What standard would the case need to meet in order for that verdict to be reached?
In Utah, as you said, there is a laundry list of circumstances that give rise to when the death penalty can be utilized in certain felonies. And with respect to aggravated murder, what that speaks to is, in this case, someone using a gun, shooting a gun, in the case of this shooter, in a way that not only led to the death of an individual, but which endangered the lives of others. So when you look at what happened, this very brazen attack on Charlie Kirk happened on a university campus at an event where over 3,000 people were in attendance. So firing that rifle, that shotgun from that 200 feet distance clearly created danger to those others. And it's remarkable that other individuals were not injured and not murdered in the way that Charlie Kirk was. So that circumstance alone will give prosecutors the foundation and the base that they need to assert or to attempt to assert that this is a case where the death penalty would be appropriate.
What struck me, and I think a lot of people, is hearing the governor say in that press conference that he believed no one else would be charged. I mean, given what we learned today, that the shooter was in communication with his roommate, do you expect there to be more questioning on what he knew and when, and that maybe we don't have the full picture here yet?
Yeah, I think one thing we learned by the FBI director that tweeted out or made the public statement on social media early on that a person of interest was in custody and then had to walk that back is that it is so irresponsible to make predictions or to try to speculate about what an ongoing investigation might reach or might conclude. And in this case, yes, we know that this investigation, although it has resulted in someone being arrested, that there's so much more we don't know about this case. You mentioned the motive early on. We know that there are writings on some of the bullet shells. We know that there's comments that have been made on social media sites, but to date, there hasn't really been, I think, a clear picture of what the motive is, contrary to those individuals who were quick to say that this was some kind of, leftist person or some kind of political motivation by those on the left. We don't have that information at this date. In fact, what we do have is contrary to that. We know that his family were registered Republicans and that he had no party affiliation as it relates to being a Republican or a Democrat. So I think it's really irresponsible for those who are suggesting that this is somehow, motivation of someone who was angry at Donald Trump or his administration. I just don't think we know enough to make that conclusion.
Yeah, a good note of caution, I think, when there's a lot of speculation still rife. Ariva, we really appreciate your analysis. Thank you.